Close your eyes and let us drift back through time to an evening in 16th-century Tétouan, a city nestled between the Rif Mountains and the Mediterranean Sea. The sun has just begun its descent, casting golden light over whitewashed walls and terracotta rooftops. The air is warm, scented with salt from the lagoon, wood smoke from cooking fires, and the faint sweetness of orange blossoms. This is a place of quiet rhythms, where the day's labor eases into the gentle hum of evening. The clink of copper tools, the murmur of neighbors exchanging news, the rustle of linen robes as families return home. There are no grand battles or royal intrigues here, only the soft, enduring pulse of daily life. Tétouan, in this era, is a city shaped by craftsmanship and trade. Its narrow streets wind like veins through the Medina, leading to bustling souks, where weavers, potters, and metalsmiths ply their trades. The lagoon, a shimmering mirror at the city's edge, reflects the glow of lanterns as fishermen mend their nets and merchants tally the day's goods. Tonight, we will wander these streets slowly, observing the textures of life in this Moroccan city, the way bread is kneaded at dusk, the flicker of oil lamps behind latticed windows, the careful hands of artisans at work. There is no hurry. Each detail is a thread in the tapestry of the ordinary, the unremarkable, the deeply comforting. Let us begin at the edge of the lagoon, where the water meets the land, and the first lanterns of evening are lit. The lagoon is calm tonight. Small wooden boats, their hulls weathered by years of use, bob lightly at anchor. A fisherman named Yusuf sits on the dock, his hands moving patiently over a net. The fibers are rough, woven from hemp grown in the nearby valleys. He works by touch, his fingers finding the breaks and knots with practiced ease. Beside him, a clay lamp flickers, a simple thing, shaped by a potter's hands and fueled by olive oil. Its light is warm, uneven, casting dancing shadows on the water. The net will be ready by morning, just as it has been for generations. Beyond the docks, the city rises in layers. Houses of sun-dried brick and plaster climb the hillside, their flat roofs dotted with drying herbs and bundles of reeds. From the open doorways comes the scent of simmering tagine, cumin, saffron, slow-cooked lamb. A woman adjusts the coals beneath her earthenware pot, the glow of the fire softening the lines of her face. This is where our evening begins, in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the glow of lanterns on the lagoon. As the last light of day fades behind the Rif Mountains, the Medina of Tétouan settles into its evening rhythms. The narrow streets, shaded by overhanging balconies of carved cedar, are now bathed in the golden glow of hanging lanterns. Here, in the heart of the city, the artisans work, each trade occupying its own quarter, a tradition passed down through centuries. Let us pause first at the copper souk, where the air hums with the sound of metal meeting wood. Master coppersmiths, their hands darkened by years of patina, shape bowls, trays, and lanterns with slow, deliberate strokes. A young apprentice turns a delicate spout over a flame, the copper glowing briefly before it is plunged into water with a hiss. Nearby, an older craftsman chases intricate patterns into a platter, each groove a testament to patience, each swirl a memory of designs handed down from father to son. The tools here are simple but precise. Wooden mallets with rounded heads, chisels sharpened to fine points, tongs blackened by countless hours in the forge. The copper itself arrives in sheets from the mountains, traded by merchants who travel the old caravan routes. By lantern light, the finished pieces gleam, rose gold and burnished, ready to carry food to tables or light to shadowed rooms. A few steps away, the weaver's quarter breathes in quiet industry. Looms of aged walnut wood stand like sentinels in dimly lit workshops. The weavers, men and women alike, move with a rhythm as old as the city itself, their shuttles darting back and forth, threading wool and silk into intricate patterns. Some cloth is dyed the deep blue of indigo, others the warm red of crushed poppies. The fibers whisper as they tighten, row by row, becoming blankets, robes, or the striped belts worn by the mountain tribes. In the corner of one workshop, a grandmother spins raw wool into yarn, her spindle a whirring blur between her fingers. She hums as she works, a wordless tune that her granddaughter, weaving nearby, unconsciously mimics. There is no need for haste here. The cloth will be finished when it is finished. Beyond the looms, the scent of tannin and wet leather marks the tanner's quarter. The great stone vats of dye sit idle now, but the hides from yesterday's labor, soft goat leather and sturdy camel hide, hang drying on ropes. A lone craftsman stitches a pair of babouche slippers by lamplight, his needle flashing in and out of the supple leather. The slippers will be lined with fleece in winter, left light for summer. They will mold to the wearer's feet, as all good things do with time. And so the Medina's crafts continue, each trade a thread in the fabric of the night. There are no loud proclamations here, no grand dramas, only the quiet certainty of hands that know their work. As we leave the souk, the lanterns above us sway gently in the evening breeze, their light pooling on the cobblestones like liquid gold. Ahead, the aroma of baking bread beckons us toward the communal ovens, where the day's final loaves are being drawn from the embers. As dusk settles over Tétouan, the communal ovens of the Medina glow like hearths of the earth itself. These domed clay structures, their surfaces blackened by generations of use, stand at the heart of each neighborhood. Here, families bring their kneaded dough, some stamped with a distinctive pattern to mark their household, leaving it in the care of the oven tenders, who know each loaf by touch and memory. A woman named Fatima approaches, her hands cradling a round of dough swaddled in linen. She exchanges quiet greetings with the baker, an older man whose forearms bear the faint scars of a lifetime near the flames. With practiced ease, he slides her loaf onto a long wooden peel and guides it into the oven's depths. The heat inside is fierce, but the baker moves without hesitation, his rhythm as steady as the tides of the nearby lagoon. The bread of Tétouan is simple, but sacred. Flour ground from local wheat, water from the mountain springs, a pinch of salt traded from the coast, and the wild yeast that clings to the very air of the city. Some loaves are flecked with anise or barley, others brushed with olive oil just before baking. As they bake, their crusts darken to a deep gold, their interiors staying soft as cloud. Nearby, children linger, drawn by the scent. One boy, barely tall enough to peer over the oven's ledge, is handed a scrap of warm dough by a laughing baker, a small kindness, a moment's sweetness. He eats it slowly, savoring the way the heat lingers on his tongue. As the last loaves are drawn from the ovens, the city's evening meal begins to take shape. In courtyards tucked behind unassuming doorways, families gather on low cushions around woven trays. The dishes are humble but nourishing, perhaps a tagine of lentils and preserved lemon, or a stew of pumpkin and chickpeas, simmered since midday in a clay pot over coals. The bread, still warm, is torn by hand and used to scoop up bites. No utensils here, only the simplicity of shared food. In one home, a grandmother grinds toasted cumin with a stone mortar, its rhythmic scraping a familiar evening sound. The spice will be sprinkled over boiled eggs or folded into softened butter for the morning meal. Her movements are slow, her thoughts far away, perhaps remembering other evenings, other kitchens. From the rooftops, the call to prayer drifts over the city, not as a summons, but as a reminder, a pause in the day's labor. Some set aside their work to bow, others continue stirring pots or mending clothes, their quiet prayers woven into the tasks themselves. And as the stars begin to appear, first one, then many, the lanterns of Tétouan burn a little brighter. Behind latticed windows, a girl lights an oil lamp, its flame flickering as she adjusts the wick. The light catches the edges of her embroidery hoop, where a half-finished pattern of pomegranates and vines waits for tomorrow's hands. As the last traces of indigo fade from the sky, the homes of Tétouan turn inward, toward warmth, toward quiet, toward the small ceremonies that mark the day's end. In the tiled courtyard of a family home, a mother pours water from a clay jug over her daughter's hands. The ritual is simple. First the right hand, then the left, the water catching the light of an overhead lantern before disappearing into the drain beneath their feet. This is the wudu, the washing before evening prayer. But it is also something more, a moment of stillness. The girl watches the droplets cling to her wrists, feeling the day's dust rinse away. The water is cool, drawn this morning from the well and left in the shade to settle. When the washing is done, they kneel together on a reed mat, their shadows merging on the whitewashed wall behind them. Nearby, in the hushed dimness of a bedchamber, an elderly merchant prepares for sleep. His nightly routine has not changed in 40 years. First, he beats the day's dust from his woolen cloak with a palm frond whisk. Next, he rubs his feet with a paste of crushed rosemary and olive oil, a remedy for the aches of walking the Medina's steep streets. Finally, he winds his turban cloth into a loose coil, the fabric releasing the scent of sun and saffron as it unfolds. Downstairs, the household's youngest son spreads a sleeping mat on the roof, where the night air is sweetest. His grandmother joins him, carrying a tray of mint tea and 2 glasses clouded with age. They do not speak at first. Instead, they listen. To the rustle of bats in the fig tree, to the distant laughter of neighbors sharing a late meal, to the occasional bray of a donkey in its stable. When she does speak, it is to tell an old story, not of kings or battles, but of her own girlhood, when the city's walls were first repaired after the Portuguese raids. The boy knows this tale by heart, but he listens as if it were new, watching the stars brighten above them. Meanwhile, in the home of a Jewish dyer near the Mela, the rituals differ, but the quiet is the same. A father checks the locks on his dye storage chest, his fingers brushing the intricate ironwork. His wife lights the Sabbath lamp early. Though it is only Friday afternoon, the flame will need to last until tomorrow evening. Their daughter folds freshly washed linens, pressing each piece to her face to inhale the scent of the lavender sprigs tucked between them. Back in the Medina, a public bathhouse begins its final round of visitors. The attendant, a man with a back bent from years of carrying water, rakes the coals beneath the great heating tank. Steam rises in lazy curls as the last bathers soak in the warmth, their muscles unwinding. A young bride, her henna still dark on her palms, is scrubbed with a loofah by her new sister-in-law, a gesture of welcome, of belonging. And as the moon climbs higher, the city sighs into repose. A cat curls on a windowsill. A night watchman makes his first round, his lantern bobbing like a firefly in the alleys. Somewhere, a baby fusses briefly before being soothed with a lullaby, half remembered, half invented. Tomorrow will come, with its markets, its chores, its thousand small demands. But for now, there is only this: the whisper of breath slowing, the weight of a blanket, the certainty of rest. While most of Tétouan sleeps, the city is never entirely still. There are those who move through the night like shadows, guardians of the hours between dusk and dawn. Let us first follow old Idris, the night watchman of the Andalusian quarter. His sandals shuffle against cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Every hour, without fail, he pauses at the public fountain to dip his fingers in the water, both to stay awake and to mark the passage of time by the ripple of stars reflected in the basin. His lantern, protected by thin sheets of goat horn, casts just enough light to reveal a scorpion skittering from his path, but not so much as to disturb the sleepers behind latticed windows. His rounds take him past the silent workshops of the souk, where the scent of cedar from the woodcarver's quarter still lingers. Here, the cats hold dominion. A striped tomcat rises from his nest of wool scraps in a weaver's doorway, stretching before padding after Idris for a few paces. Not for companionship, but because the watchman's route often leads to the fishmonger's alley, where scraps might be found. As Idris turns toward the date market, another light appears in the darkness, this one from the underground bakery near the old city gates. Here, the bakers work in near silence, their faces flushed in the hellish glow of the oven's mouth. The dough they shape now, kneaded before midnight with water, chilled by clay jars left in the courtyard, will become the city's first bread by dawn. A young apprentice, still blinking sleep from his eyes, scores each loaf with a thumbnail's quick slash, his personal mark, just as his master taught him. Meanwhile, in a house near the great mosque, a different kind of light burns. Behind a second-story window, a student copies verses from a medical text onto strips of parchment. His reed pen whispers across the surface, the ink made from gall nuts and gum arabic. Every so often, he pauses to rub his knuckles or adjust the wick of his lamp, not wanting to waste olive oil, but needing just enough light to keep the letters clean. The night, he knows, is when the mind is sharpest, when the arguments of long-dead scholars seem to speak directly through the page. Down by the lagoon, the night fishermen are already launching their boats. Their lanterns, small, floating ones made of sealed gourds, drift like a constellation fallen to the water's surface. The nets they cast now will bring up the silvery sardines that will grace tomorrow's breakfast tables. One fisherman hums as he works, a tune without words that matches the lap of waves against his hull. And high above them all, on the rooftop of a wealthy merchant's home, a sleepless woman paces. The tiles are cool beneath her bare feet. In her arms, a newborn stirs, but does not wake. She pauses to watch the slow dance of the watchman's light through the streets below, a reminder that she is not alone in her vigil. Somewhere, another mother surely stands at another window, rocking another child beneath these same stars. The night, in its way, binds them all together, the watchers, the workers, the dreamers. each playing their part in the quiet symphony of darkness. Just before dawn, when the night's darkness is at its deepest, the city begins to stir from below rather than above. Not from sunlight, but from sound. The first voice belongs not to a muezzin, but to the water carriers. Their heavy leather sandals slap against the cobblestones as they make their way to the public wells, their empty clay jars knocking together with a hollow, wooden sound. At the great mosque, the lamplighter extinguishes the last of the overnight lanterns one by one, their wicks blackened but still warm. Inside, the caretaker unrolls the prayer mats with a practiced flick of his wrists. Their woven patterns, geometric vines and 8-pointed stars, barely visible in the gloom. The scent of yesterday's incense lingers in the corners, a ghost of sandalwood and myrrh. Now comes the moment the city has been waiting for. High in the minaret, the muezzin clears his throat softly before beginning the call. His voice is neither young nor old, but timeless, a sound that seems to rise from the stones themselves. Allahu Akbar. The words float over the rooftops, reaching the baker pulling hot loaves from his oven, the fisherman mending his nets by lantern light, the mother nursing her child in the half-dark. As the call continues, the city awakens in layers. In the stables near the eastern gate, donkeys shake straw from their backs, their bells jingling softly as they nudge their empty feed troughs. A milkmaid arrives with her goats, their udders full and warm. She kneels in the hay, her skilled hands squeezing rhythmically as streams of frothy milk ping against the sides of her copper pail. Meanwhile, at the communal oven, the first customers of the day arrive, servants from wealthier households sent to collect still warm bread, wrapped in striped cotton cloth. The baker's wife marks each sale with a notch on a wooden tally stick, her fingers moving as automatically as her husband's shaping of the dough. In the Jewish quarter, a different morning ritual unfolds. A shopkeeper unlatches his wooden shutters with a creak, revealing shelves of polished scales and copper measures. He breathes deeply of the cool air before setting out his first goods of the day. A basket of dried apricots from the Sousse Valley, their orange brightness startling against the gray dawn. The sky lightens by degrees now, from charcoal to dove gray to the pale blue of a robin's egg. On the rooftops, women emerge with their first tasks of the day. One shakes out sleeping mats, sending dust motes dancing in the new light. Another checks the earthenware jars of preserved lemons, their yellow rinds peeking through the brine like shy creatures from the deep. And in the narrowest alley of the tanner's quarter, where the walls still smell faintly of mint from yesterday's chewing, a cat brings her kittens one by one from their hiding place beneath a stair. She deposits them in a patch of sunlight that has just begun to creep across the cobbles, the first of thousands such patches that will warm the city this day. As the sun climbs above the eastern hills, the marketplace stirs like a great beast stretching its limbs. The first to arrive are the farmers from the surrounding valleys, their donkeys laden with bulging saddlebags of produce, the animals' flanks still damp with morning dew. One grizzled old man from the orchards of Chefchaouen unfolds a cloth to reveal last night's harvest. Pale green almonds still in their fuzzy casings, their milky kernels a seasonal delicacy cracked open between stones by eager children. Nearby, a spice merchant from Fez methodically arranges his conical piles of turmeric, cumin, and cinnamon. His brass scales catch the early light as he adjusts the counterweights. A ritual performed each dawn to ensure fairness. The scent is overwhelming in the best way. Pungent, earthy, with the faintest floral hint of dried rose petals kept in a separate cedar box for special customers. At the cloth seller's stalls, the first silks of the day are unfurled with a whisper. A length of saffron-dyed linen billows momentarily, like a captured sunrise before settling onto the display table. The merchant, a woman with henna'd fingertips, touches the fabric with unconscious pride. Her grandfather had taught her how to distinguish true Damascus silk from imitations by the way it rippled in the breeze. The fishmonger's quarter comes alive with the slap of wet catches on marble slabs. Sardines glisten like liquid metal in the growing light, arranged in careful arcs by a seller whose hands never stop moving, scaling, gutting, trimming with a curved knife worn smooth from decades of use. His apprentice scurries to collect the offal in a bucket, destined for the soap-maker's vats, where nothing will be wasted. In the shade of the old carob tree, the date sellers have laid out palm frond mats to display their wares. The varieties are arranged by sweetness. The dry, caramel-like Deglet Noor separated from the sticky Majul dates, swollen with honeyed richness. An elderly Tuareg trader in indigo robes samples one from each basket, nodding approval, his blue-stained fingers leaving faint marks on the pale fruits. At the edge of the market, the pottery sellers take advantage of the cool morning to rearrange their fragile inventory. A young apprentice nervously steadies a stack of tagine pots while his master barks good-natured instructions. The conical lids fit only one way, their grooves worn smooth from years of testing. Nearby, a customer runs her thumb along the rim of a drinking bowl, feeling for imperfections in the glaze, as her grandmother had taught her. The money changers have already begun their delicate dance near the mosque steps. Their tables are set with small brass weights and leather pouches of coins, Fatimid dinars, Portuguese cruzados, and local copper falls arranged in careful stacks. The oldest among them, a man who remembers when the Portuguese briefly held this city, tests a suspect coin by biting it gently, his teeth still strong enough to detect lead mixed with silver. As the call rings out for mid-morning prayer, the market's rhythm pauses but doesn't stop. A fruit seller continues slicing melons for thirsty customers while muttering prayers under his breath. A leather worker ties a half-finished sandal to his wrist so he can bow without losing his place in the stitching. The city's heartbeat continues, steady and sure, as it has for centuries. Neither fully sacred nor entirely profane, but beautifully, humanly both. The sun now hangs directly above Tétouan, pressing down like a flat hand upon the city. The whitewashed walls glow almost painfully bright, forcing shopkeepers to squint as they retreat into whatever shade they can find. Even the dust seems to settle, as if the heat has grown too heavy to stir. In the spice market, the merchants have drawn their striped wool curtains across the stalls, creating a patchwork of shadow. Behind one such curtain, old Musa fans himself with a palm frond while counting the morning's earnings. The coins are warm to the touch, having absorbed hours of sunlight on his brass tray. Every so often, he pauses to sip from a clay jar of barley water, the liquid slightly thickened with a pinch of ground fenugreek, just as his wife prepares it each summer. At the fabric dyer's quarter, work has slowed to a near standstill. The great vats of indigo and saffron dye sit uncovered, their surfaces forming a thin skin in the heat. A young apprentice dozes against a wall, his blue-stained hands resting on his knees, the only movement the occasional twitch as he dreams of cool river water. Nearby, lengths of freshly dyed cotton hang motionless on their lines, their vibrant reds and yellows blazing against the bleached sky. The public fountain has become the center of quiet activity. Women arrive with empty water jars balanced on their hips, their footsteps slower now than in the morning's coolness. They linger longer than necessary, letting the overflow run over their wrists before filling their vessels. A girl of perhaps 7 years kneels at the basin's edge, carefully floating olive leaves in the water, each one a tiny boat, carrying her whispered wishes downstream. In the wealthier homes near the Kasbah, the thick clay walls provide natural respite from the heat. A merchant's wife reclines on a raised divan, peeling a blood orange with a silver knife. The citrus scent mingles with the damp earth smell rising from the courtyard's trickling fountain. Her maidservant slowly turns a palm frond fan, creating just enough air to stir the hanging strands of amber beads in the doorway. Meanwhile, in the narrow streets of the Medina, the cats have claimed dominion over the shade. A striped tom sprawls luxuriously across the only cool patch of stones in an alley, ignoring the frustrated mutterings of a spice delivery boy forced to detour around his furry bulk. Nearby, beneath the overhang of a carpet seller's stall, a mother cat nurses her kittens, her tail twitching occasionally at the buzz of persistent flies. The baker's quarter is strangely quiet, the ovens banked until evening when the temperature will drop enough to bake again. Only the communal mill continues its work, the great grinding stones turning endlessly as a blindfolded donkey circles the trough. The miller sits in the doorway, sifting flour through his fingers to test its fineness, the white powder catching in his beard like premature frost. At the lagoon's edge, even the water seems sluggish. The fishermen have pulled their boats onto the shore, mending nets in whatever shade the hulls provide. One old sailor wets his keffiyeh in the brackish water before wrapping it around his head, the evaporation offering fleeting relief. His grandson lies beside him, using a stick to trace invisible maps in the damp sand, trade routes to Alexandria, to Palermo, to places he knows only from stories. This is the hour when time stretches thin. When the call to noon prayer echoes through the nearly empty streets, even the faithful move slowly toward the mosques, their shadows pooled tightly beneath them. The city breathes shallowly, conserving its energy like the lizards motionless on the sun-baked walls, waiting for the sun to relent. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the Rif Mountains, the city exhales, a collective release of held breath. The first sign comes from the rooftops, where women emerge like flowers turning toward the light. They shake out sleeping mats that smell of warm wool, beat cushions plumped with raw cotton, and turn the last of the day's drying herbs, their fingers releasing bursts of thyme and oregano into the cooling air. In the dyeing quarter, the vats are uncovered once more. A master dyer tests the temperature of his indigo bath with his elbow, an ancient method passed down through generations. Satisfied, he begins lowering the pre-soaked yarn into the vat using a hooked stick, the fibers disappearing into the inky depths, where they'll transform from pale flax to the blue of deep ocean water. His apprentices stir the vats, in slow figure-8 patterns, their arms moving in unison like underwater plants swaying with the tide. The scent of baking bread returns as the ovens are stoked back to life. At the communal bakery, children cluster near the open doorway, drawn by the warmth and the promise of scraps. The baker, his forehead glistening in the heat, occasionally tosses them a misshapen loaf too ugly to sell, laughing as they scramble like kittens after the prize. The lucky victor breaks the bread into equal shares, their fingers leaving small fingerprints in the soft interior. Down by the tanneries, work resumes with renewed energy. The hides, having soaked all afternoon in lime and water, are now ready for scraping. Teams of 2 work together, one holding the dripping skin taut, while the other removes hair and flesh with a curved blade. Their rhythm is musical, the wet slap of hide on wood, the metallic shush of the blade, the occasional grunt of effort. Nearby, an old man stitches a delicate saddlebag, his needle flashing in and out of the supple leather, as easily as if it were passing through water. In the wealthier homes, the evening meal preparations begin. A cook grinds cumin, coriander, and a single precious clove in a brass mortar, the spices releasing their perfume in the courtyard's dappled light. A scullery maid plucks a chicken with quick, efficient motions, the feathers collecting in a basket to be used later for pillow stuffing. The lady of the house tastes the simmering broth from a wooden spoon, add in a pinch more salt before covering the pot with a woven straw lid that fits as perfectly as a mother's hand on a child's brow. At the public gardens near the old city walls, the first evening strollers appear. An elderly scholar walks slowly along the irrigation channels, occasionally pausing to recite poetry to the orange trees. Young lovers, properly chaperoned of course, sit on opposite sides of the same marble bench, communicating through the language of lowered lashes and carefully timed sighs. A group of children chase fireflies that have emerged early, their laughter floating up through the cypress trees like bubbles. As the call to evening prayer echoes through the streets, the city seems to shimmer, not just from the golden light bathing the whitewashed walls, but from the rekindling of human activity. The tailor resumes his interrupted stitching, the blacksmith pumps his bellows, the water seller adjusts the straps of his overflowing goat skins, and on the rooftop of a modest home near the tanneries, a young mother bounces her baby in time with the distant rhythm of a darbuka drum. She hums a lullaby her own mother once sang, watching as the first lanterns of evening are lit across the city. Tiny stars mirroring those just beginning to appear in the violet sky above. The city's surrender tonight comes not all at once, but in stages, like a series of doors closing, each with its own distinctive sound. The great wooden gates of the Medina creak shut, their iron hinges groaning after centuries of the same nightly ritual. The guards yawn as they slide the heavy crossbeams into place, knowing their true work won't begin until the pre-dawn hours when the farmers arrive. In the souks, the merchants fold their striped awnings with practiced snaps. A spice seller brushes stray cumin seeds from his display table, leaving them for the mice who have waited patiently all day. The copper workers cover their finest pieces with damp cloths to prevent tarnishing, the fabrics settling over bowls and trays like ghostly versions of the objects themselves. At the caravanserai near the eastern gate, The last arriving trader pays the night watchman an extra coin to guard his bales of saffron. The watchman nods solemnly, lighting a small oil lamp that will burn until morning, its flame reflected 100 times in the polished brass samovars stacked nearby. In the courtyard, the camels sigh as they kneel for the night, their breath warm and grassy in the cooling air. The lagoon, which has mirrored the day's activities so faithfully, now begins its nocturnal transformations. The fishing boats, pulled ashore hours ago, cast long shadows that merge with the reeds at water's edge. A heron stands motionless in the shallows, its reflection perfectly still beneath it. 2 sentinels keeping watch over the night. In the squares, the storytellers gather their final audiences. An old man with a beard like carded wool recounts the tale of the foolish jinn who tried to move the Rif Mountains 1 stone at a time. The children listening already know the ending, but they lean forward anyway, their faces golden in the lantern light. When the story concludes, they scatter like sparks from a doused fire, each carrying some fragment of the tale home to their dreams. The houses surrender to darkness 1 window at a time. Here, a mother blows out the lamp after checking her sleeping children. There, an old woman leaves a single wick burning, a night light for the angels, as her grandmother taught her. In the scholar's house, a single window remains illuminated, the flickering candle revealing a hunched figure still copying texts, his pen moving as if guided by forces beyond fatigue. And at last, the lanterns themselves, those faithful witnesses to Tétouan's evenings. Their light trembles in the harbor breeze, making the boats seem to rock even at anchor. The reflections stretch and shrink on the dark water, sometimes appearing to drip like liquid gold into the depths. One by one, they too are extinguished, some by careful hands, others by the wind's casual breath, until only the moon's pale glow remains. The city sleeps now, or seems to. Beneath this quiet surface, life continues in subtle ways. The baker's yeast bubbling unseen in its clay pot, the unborn chick turning in its egg, the roots of the olive trees drinking deeply from soil still warm from the day's heat. And far out on the lagoon, where no one watches, a fish breaks the surface, just once, its silver body flashing briefly before disappearing into the dark water. The ripples spread outward in perfect circles, traveling farther than anyone could follow, carrying with them the memory of this night into the countless nights still to come.